On October 12, 2021, a controversy involving an artist known as TinaFate and a YouTuber by the name of DaftPina shook the internet, tarnishing the reputations of both forever. The subject would come up in criticisms of Daft's actions for videos to come. But in response, on January 31st, 2023, Daft made a video trying to clear the air titled TinaFate 1, The Real Artist Catfish Story. It was fairly well received, and even had multiple creators, such as Verdus Joe, ThatCreepyReading, Solid JJ, and even a mod from Tina's Discord server weigh in with their opinions. But there's just one problem. This isn't the real story. Don't get the wrong idea. TinaFate 1, later revealed to be a guy named David, did catfish somebody. But what Daft missed, possibly intentionally, was the full story behind what went down, as well as the story of the person who had interacted with David, who is known as Maddie. And when you look at the information, which I got from interviewing over half a dozen people, including Maddie herself, you'll start to realize that the details in the background not only change everything, but prove that Daft, as well as everyone who took part in the video, have only seen the tip of the iceberg, and spoke out of their ass in multiple cases. What makes things worse is that the information that I'm about to share with you was available the whole time, and has gone unnoticed. That was at least until now. Hello everyone, I'm the Bandit of the East, and today we are talking about TinaFate and the problem of internet vigilantism. Let's begin. So first off, who is TinaFate? Well, they are an artist, and a popular one at that, focusing on drawing anime characters with a distinct style which set them apart from others. You may have seen the voiceovers of their comics on YouTube today, but they are also known for their controversy regarding allegations of pretending to be a girl so they could catfish a minor and receive nudes from them, which was exposed when a post was made showing TinaFate's Facebook profile, revealing them to be a man named David. But how did such a thing come to light? If you are watching this, you probably already know the story, but just in case, I'll do a bit of a recap. This all started with a tweet posted by David on July 27th, 2021, where TinaFate responded to allegations for grooming a minor who was a fan of them. Based on what was being said, Tina had been told by the minor they were 17 when Tina was 19. Because the age gap was only 2 years, everyone thought it was no big deal. In fact, people who looked at the situation thought the minor, who goes by Maddie, was the one who was more at fault. But I'll get into the reason for that later. Basically, the situation was resolved very quickly in TinaFate's favor, being forgiven for their actions, although they did lose their Patreon, making them 6 figures. Now, keep in mind, everyone thought TinaFate was a Filipino girl, and not a cis Filipino guy named David. A little over 2 months later, a YouTuber in the art community by the name of DaftPina entered the stage, revisiting the TinaFate situation. For those of you that don't know, DaftPina is known for his videos in art commentary and drama, although he recently has stepped away from this line of content and is focusing more on talking about cartoons. Now, while he has stepped away from drama, it is important to state that when he was focusing on drama, his videos earned him a lot of ire from his audience due to his blatant rudeness towards creators and his twisting of facts to fit false narratives. While Daft hasn't listed a lot of the videos where he did this, it's important to state that he never actually apologized for the things that he did. If you want a better understanding of what I'm talking about, I recommend checking out Rhythm Rev's video on DaftPina, as it's the best video on the subject. Back to the main point. The drama started with Daft taking jabs at David through Twitter, implying that David is racist based on David saying the N-word in 2020, and on David getting an ad on YouTube about a racism quiz, where Daft said, "YouTube ads are tailored to your search history." In Daft's video on the matter, he stated these tweets were supposed to be taken as jokes. Sure. But it was after these jokes that Daft made a tweet stating he's been hearing allegations about TinaFate that are similar to Lulaboo, and asked anyone who knows anything to send him information via email. For context, Lulaboo was an online figure who got exposed for pretending to be a Japanese lesbian when they were actually a Latino male named Adrian, and also was exposed for doing a multitude of other horrible and shitty things. The list includes scamming people for money through lies and sympathy baiting, manipulating people into abusive relationships through lies and also sympathy baiting, telling lies to people in Discord servers to get them to fight each other, and making sexual advances on minors. It was also someone Daft had made a video on, just before he started looking into the TinaFate case. Through the tweet comparing David to Lulaboo, Daft was able to get a lot of information pertaining to David, which included DMs between David and Maddie that hadn't been shown yet, showing the two engaging in sexual conversations even after Maddie stated she was 17. In response to this, David responded mocking Daft and making light of the allegations that were being brought back against him. Nice. Daft responded back saying that he had David's name and face, and he'd love to have a video chat with David. For 2 days, nothing happened, until finally Daft made a post with blurred images of David's Facebook profile, proving that TinaFate was actually a Filipino guy named David the whole time, which meant he lied about his identity while accepting nudes from someone who he was told was a minor. In all honesty, proving David was a guy would not be too bad, as catfishing is just a fucked up thing to do, let alone with a minor. The problem was that the information showed in Daft's post allowed people to find David's actual Facebook profile, which revealed David's full name, face, places he lived, and identities of his family members and friends. In the eyes of everyone who's keeping up with the drama, Daft doxed David, and he was heavily criticized for it. When the information was out, David made a tweet longer confessing that he was the person in the post Daft made, apologizing for what he did, and stating he didn't want anyone's sympathy. He just asked people not to harass his family. Daft later made his own tweet longer, apologizing for poorly handling the situation. To this day, David is still called a catfish, and Daft is called a doxer. Now, despite the news that came out about David, he was viewed more as a victim of the situation. Not only that, but his follower count actually increased significantly, and is currently at over 800,000 followers on Twitter. But even though his following increased, he never actually interacts with his audience in his tweets like he used to, only posting art. About a year and a half later, Daft made a video going into more detail about what happened on his side of things. Some of the defenses he made was that he had tried to reach out to David to settle things privately, that posting information about David was needed to prevent him from catfishing more people, and that the information about David didn't technically dox him. While there's multiple problems I have with these defenses, I will not go into them yet. Instead, we'll look into a portion of David's controversy that no one talks about. We all know what happened between Daft and David, but how about we take a look at what happened between David and Maddie? Now, you may be asking, hold on a minute, Bandit. Why should we even care about that? David confessed to pretending to be a girl, and we have confirmation that he asked for a minor's nudes. He's obviously a predator, and this had to be done to stop him from doing it again. And to that, I'd have to say yes, but no. Don't get me wrong, from a surface level, this is an easy conclusion to come to, and a lot of people have already come to this conclusion. But I felt something was off about all of this. If David is such a manipulative predator, why aren't there more cases of similar behavior from him? Yes, I know Daft went over some evidence. I'll go over that later. What I'm referring to is other forms of sexual predation. When looking at other cases like Cosmodor, EDP, and Daft's favorite TinaFate stand-in Lulaboo, you'll find a pattern of behavior in their actions from multiple victims. But such a pattern really isn't present from David. Now, even if David is not as bad as EDP or Cosmodor, it does not justify his actions with Maddie, and he still had to be called out for this. But if the instance with Maddie was the only instance, why was it with Maddie and not with someone else? Looking into this, there are many, many more layers to this story, and they start to appear when we look at the testimonies. We all know the outcome that came from David and Maddie's relationship, but very few actually know how it started, and even less how it escalated. There are two reasons for this. One, there aren't a whole lot of DMs of the conversations, and while there are far more that I found that Daft had completely missed, it still leaves some gaps in the story. Two, for the longest time we only had one testimony with some level of detail, which was David's, something Daft also covers poorly, and I'll go into that one first. But with some research, I was able to get into contact with Maddie and get her side of the story as well. Unfortunately, even when getting both sides of the story, I was left with more questions than answers. So let's look at David's testimony, which was made on June 28th, 2021. Keep in mind, this was made when everyone thought David was a Filipino girl named Tina. According to David, this all started when he got messages on his Patreon from Maddie, saying she just wanted to be his friend. David thought he'd give it a chance and they talked on Discord. The first interactions left a good impression, but then Maddie got a little more flirty. David thought it wasn't meant to be taken seriously at first, but did state that he felt she was trying to get really close to him. Over time, the messages got more sensual, and David didn't think it was meant to be taken seriously, so he went with it. He thought she was an adult at first based on voice chats they had, saying her voice sounded mature. As conversations got more erotic, Maddie said she wanted to send nudes. This is when they exchanged ages, and Maddie said she was 17, as shown in this screenshot. Immediately upon stating her age, Maddie started apologizing for taking part in the conversation, stating that she just now realized the age difference could be bad. David still went with the relationship, although on his post he admitted he was wrong to continue with this. Eventually, he realized what he was doing was wrong, but didn't know how to decline the conversation subtly. When he tried to stop being sexual in their conversations, Maddie got more clingy and was messaging David every hour. David tried to continue responding without sounding attached, but realizing he did something really wrong, he chose to ignore her and blocked her on Discord. After the block, Maddie tried to get into contact with David through his Discord friends, so David planned on leaving the server until Maddie left. Maddie tried to get to David through the regulars in his Discord server, but eventually she was kicked out by David's friends for being stalky and obsessive. This is confirmed with a screenshot of a Discord DM on David's testimony. Once Maddie was kicked from the server, David said Maddie frantically messaged him in all of his social media accounts, including Twitter, Patreon, and Discord, going from being worried to begging to be friends again. We can see this from one of the Discord screenshots of Maddie trying to get David's attention, and in some Twitter DMs with Maddie begging to not be blocked, saying how sad she would be if that happened. Then, later, Maddie posted screenshots of her conversations with David, saying he groomed her. David said he didn't think it was grooming since he had friends in high school with these kinds of relationships, but later said he still thought what he did was bad. At the end of the testimony, David apologizes for what he did, saying he didn't expect forgiveness and sympathy, and asked people not to harass Maddie, as she just wanted to talk to him. From looking at David's testimony, there are several key details I want to focus on when moving forward. 1. Maddie approached David through Patreon. 2. Maddie was the one who started being flirty. 3. Maddie was the one who escalated things into being sexual with David. 4. Maddie was the one who asked for nudes. 5. Maddie was incredibly obsessive and stalky. 6. David didn't think there was anything wrong with this relationship at first. Before we move forward, I can say number 6 is false. In a DM I was able to find between Maddie and David just after they exchanged ages, David had stated their relationship is fine as long as they keep it to themselves. So he felt nothing was wrong with the relationship. He should not have felt they needed to keep it private. When looking at the rest of this, it really paints a darker image of Maddie, saying she was the initiator and the one who tried to make things sexual. David still needs to be held accountable for accepting Maddie's advances, but if what he says is true, then his portrayal as a manipulative predator who uses his status to prey after minors doesn't hold up. But we still have another testimony to look at. So let's see what Maddie has to say. When talking to Maddie, she was able to confirm a few things in David's testimony. First, she did in fact initially contact him through Patreon, which means Maddie was paying to get into contact with David. Second, they did in fact have a voice chat where they first communicated with each other. It's important to state that according to Maddie, David did not speak once. He just used the voice chat text channel. When asked about who pushed the interactions forward, Maddie at first stated she did not recall, initially admitting to being flirty when first speaking to him, but then stated that David was the one who to start the sexual talk. Next, when it came to the nude trading, Maddie once again said she didn't remember who initiated it, saying it could have been either one of them. Although she did add that David was extremely interested in being flirtatious and really wanted to get more pictures from Maddie, specifically stating that David really wanted pictures of her genitals, and Maddie sent more pictures than she received. The only DM I found that supported this was Maddie offering a video of her masturbating to David, which he accepted. Unfortunately, the account that Maddie initially contacted David with was deleted, so what actually was sent or received, as well as what David was requesting, cannot be confirmed. Now, something that I thought was interesting was that Maddie said she didn't feel like she was groomed at all. The grooming allegations started when she mentioned the situation to someone she used to talk to, and they told her she was groomed. According to Maddie, because the friend was an adult, she thought they knew better and agreed with them. But this led me to another question. If Maddie didn't think she was groomed, why did she talk to this friend about David in the first place? According to Maddie, It was because she felt wronged. She thought Tina really liked them. So when they were blocked and ghosted, Maddie was hurt, specifically stating that seeing David's art in her timeline made her feel uneasy. Basically, she needed someone to vent to. So once she told her friend what happened, they told Maddie she was groomed and she needed to talk about this. So, for those of you that aren't following, Maddie was not the one who made the original post on David grooming her. It was actually her friend. In fact, this friend ended up getting their Twitter suspended because they brought up Maddie's situation with David and had to create a new account. Despite all of this, according to Maddie, this was not the last time Maddie and David interacted with each other. After the drama, they talked again, with Maddie saying that they still wanted to be friends, although this was still when Maddie thought David was a girl. David said to give him space and he'll get back to her soon. And when he did, he said it would be best if he blocked her. And that was the last time they talked. Now, nearing the end of our conversation, I remembered I wanted to ask about David's claim of Maddie spamming friend requests to his friends and being clingy after David ghosted her. While Maddie denies spamming friend requests to people, she does admit to being clingy and stalking, and explained why. According to her, she was vulnerable at the time. She was almost 17 and didn't have many IRL friends. So she felt the need to rely on someone popular that she could call her friend. Thus, when she was blocked without being given a reason, it really hurt. Apparently, having friends just leave her without telling her has happened before, and having it happen again with someone who made her feel special, it really hurt. It was here Maddie said since David was famous, encouraged her to send the things she did, being glad that someone who she saw as famous liked her body. It was after she told me this that she accepted she was groomed and catfished. When looking at everything she had to say, it really made me feel more sympathetic to Maddie. While David emphasized he didn't want any harassment to go towards Maddie, and referred to her as a victim, he made her sound clingy and obsessive. But hearing Maddie's side of the story, it sounds like she's just really lonely and just wants to feel like she has friends to talk to. However, I realized this wasn't the first time Maddie tried to give a testimony about her situation with David. If you look at the top left-hand corner of the Twitter DMs Maddie sent to David, you'll find an account named MadsK628, which was Maddie's Twitter during her conversations with David. By typing this account name into Twitter's search bar, I was able to find screenshots of another user that went by LaneyK628, which turned out to be a throwaway account made by Maddie to call out David. All actual posts from this account are no longer available due to it being deleted. But multiple screenshots of the posts as well as replies allow us to get an idea of what was being said. The first tweet she made said she was groomed by TinaFate 1, and was getting help from a friend that was showing screenshots of her conversations. She goes on to mention that her mental state, due to Tina's followers and popularity, has caused her stress and depression. Maddie ends the tweet saying she knows she's done wrong things, but Tina is not right either. One of the replies from this burner account said, "This is the beginning," showing a Discord screenshot of David and Maddie flirting. Thing is, the response was not what Maddie had hoped. Maddie ended up getting heavily ratioed by people into replies, many finding holes in Maddie's arguments. The first one appeared with the very DM Maddie showed with the flirting. In this screenshot, it has David saying that he likes to draw boobs, where Maddie responds, "Yes you do. Your OC should do an on me," while making a cute face. For those of you who aren't cultured individuals, is a term generally used by female characters when flirting or attempting to sound cute, in which David responds saying that Maddie should draw an OC, and he would draw his own. Now, there are two problems with using the screenshot. One, if this was the beginning, like Maddie had said, then it would mean Maddie was the one who started flirting with David, asking for flirtatious art between her and David's OC, which multiple people had pointed out in their replies. Yes, David went along with it, which was wrong, but he wasn't the initiator like Maddie had told me. Next, if you look at the time of the screenshot, it says this happened on June 4th at 1:56 a.m. Maddie and David exchanged nudes on June 4th at 4:30 p.m., which was over 12 hours later. This screenshot was taken at a point before David knew Maddie was under 18, and Maddie was trying to use it as proof of David being a predator. Next, there's another screenshot of Maddie presumably talking with her friend, saying that Maddie looked at David's account with an alt on Twitter, which tore her up. In my conversation with Maddie, she stated that seeing David's art in her timeline made her feel bad, but she neglected to state that this was with an alt on her Twitter after being blocked. She also stated that she was unfollowed and blocked by David. which would mean she should not have been able to see David's art. So if she was looking at it, it was with an alt, which means it was fully intentional. There was one last thing I could find. Maddie was trying to say that David was using his power as a scare tactic against Maddie to manipulate her. But when people asked for DMs showing proof of this, Maddie couldn't provide anything. So while my conversation with Maddie honestly went well, we can see that when she first tried to cancel David, she tried to do so by misleading people and trying to make statements she had no evidence for. Yeah, the screenshots proved David was in a relationship with her, but her screenshots showed her being dishonest and appearing to be the initiator of the relationship. So these are the points based off of Maddie's testimony. 1. Maddie first communicated with David through Patreon. 2. Maddie said she was flirty, but David showed interest as well. 3. David was the one who started being sexual, not Maddie. And 4. Maddie doesn't remember who was the one who initiated the nude trading. 5. Maddie was being obsessive and stalking. We have confirmation from Maddie that she started talking to David through his Patreon, that she was stalking him, and that she was acting flirty. But things get a little messy when we look at the aspects of who asked for nudes and who first started being sexual. It basically becomes a he said she said situation. Both have shown to be dishonest in their testimonies, and while it seems more so for Maddie, I wouldn't say it's enough to prove a whole lot. But if you were paying attention, you'd know there's one more person who's involved in calling David out, who we can ask. That's right, I'm talking about Maddie's friend, who I got into contact with. They wish to keep their current name out of the video, so they asked to be referred to as Syrup. Maybe letting people pick their aliases was not the best idea. So when talking to Syrup, the main thing she could testify from Maddie's story was that David did make a lot of requests for photos, so we can't completely confirm that Maddie sent more than she received, but it sounds like David was getting too into their relationship. She could not provide a lot of details about the DMs though. The reason for this was that the conversation between the two was long, so Syrup was only shown a few of the screenshots. She specifically asked Maddie not to see any of the photos, which means nobody other than Maddie or David can confirm what was sent between them. She did confirm that Maddie went to her talking about David and that her account got suspended after making her initial post on David. But it was after this where inconsistencies in Maddie's story start to appear. The first thing I found interesting is that Syrup was never friends with Maddie at all. As far as she can recall, their first interaction was when Maddie went to Syrup to talk about TinaFate. Now, went to Syrup isn't 100% correct, as Syrup was actually responding to a tweet Maddie made about TinaFate, but I'll go more into that shortly. Before that, Maddie just followed Syrup, liking and following her tweets. Not only that, but after the David situation, Syrup also ended up blocking Maddie since she would not stop flirting with her, despite Syrup telling Maddie it made her uncomfortable and that Maddie was too young for her. When told this, Maddie got mad, saying something like, "I'm tired of being treated like a child because I'm a minor." Although another reason for the block was that Maddie tried to go back to being friends with David after trying to get Syrup to help cancel him. Okay, so after showing this video to Syrup, she was able to correct some information and provide more elaboration as to what she told me. First off, Maddie and Syrup actually first started interacting around July 15th, based on some DMs Syrup provided. Here, we can see Maddie asking Syrup if she wants to cuddle, which is also what she did with David while talking to him on Discord. What makes this situation different is that Syrup immediately asks for Maddie's age, which Maddie responds to being 17, following up by saying she's very lovey in general and just wants to make new friends, and that she's tired of people putting a legal age on friendship. On July 24th, Syrup continued to tell Maddie that her advances were making her uncomfortable. In one of the messages, it has Syrup saying that Maddie keeps questioning why Syrup wouldn't be interested in dating her, which implies Maddie kept on attempting advances despite being told to stop. To this, Maddie got really apologetic, asking for another chance, stating that she's upset with always being viewed as a kid. Now, this intrigued me. Maddie made a big deal about wanting David's attention, and how much losing their attention so suddenly hurt. But if that's the case, why was she so quick to flirt with someone else? It seems like a very fast recovery for someone to make over something that hurt them. Next, Syrup felt that when Maddie went to her, she seemed to be acting more out of spite than anything else, like it was her goal to bring David down. She said Maddie was like, "Use your follower base to take her down because she hurt my feelings and blocked me," and that she wanted to see David crumble. As Syrup summarized it, David blocked Maddie, Maddie told me to use my platform to take him down, but instead I got suspended. What was most interesting is that Syrup stated Maddie has a history of invading adult spaces and lying about her age, and when I mentioned I was trying to confirm what Maddie had told me, Syrup stated that Maddie lies all the time. This makes me wonder how much of Maddie's testimony I should believe. But what would a testimony be without DMs? Luckily, I was able to come across some DMs of Syrup's conversations with Maddie, although it looks like there is a gap between some messages. Let's see what they tell us. The conversation started on July 25th, 2 days before David made his I'm sorry post. First, we have Maddie making a public tweet, which was made on July 20th. Well, tweet is a bit tame, as it was more like a rant. It starts with Maddie saying how she can't get over Tina. I'm saying Tina because that's what's in the tweets. How Tina crushed her soul and made Maddie want to do something to herself. I'm assuming this is supposed to imply self-harm. She then goes on complaining about people expecting her to be a perfect being and lying to her, and how seeing Tina's art makes Maddie want to kill herself. These tweets got Syrup's attention, so she asked about what happened between Maddie and TinaFate. The next DM is a brief recap of how Maddie and David talked through Discord, and Maddie getting upset about being blocked without a reason. But when the messages switch to being on Discord is where things become more telling. Here we see Maddie says the following: I want to get over her, but that's difficult, especially when so many people love her. If you want to go on your own Twitter and say something, by all means. I'm way too terrified to go against 150k people she has on her side though. Next, where Maddie explained she saw David's art on Reddit, and 3 months later tried contacting them through Patreon to be friends. Maddie says she did not plan on being lewd to David, and that David started doing that herself, making her think, oh okay, I guess I'm doing this now. She then goes on to say she was just being warm and huggy, and then David was a bit lewd. I am emphasizing this moment in the DMs because this is what made Syrup say, that's 100% grooming then. The final DM I could find shows Maddie asking Syrup to be the one to say something because she is too scared of getting cancelled by David's large following, and Syrup is trying to help Maddie by asking if she has any more proof to provide against David. So when looking at this, there are a lot of things that catch my attention. First, Maddie's initial comments on David. When Maddie talked to me, she said she just wanted to vent, but the extent of Maddie's initial messages to Syrup seemed far more dramatic than venting. She was implying that she wanted to commit self-harm or suicide over the fact that David blocked her. This seems less like trying to get help and more like trying to get attention, as it's borderline suicide baiting. Next, Maddie said to Syrup that David was the one who started being lewd, but based on the fact that the person who Maddie went for help had told me she lies all the time, I'm wondering if this is even true. If not, it would mean Maddie lied to Syrup so she could get help in canceling David, which if this was an act of spite, like Syrup had said, it would make sense. Only problem is we still don't have enough evidence to believe this is the case. At least not yet. While we have testimonies of David, Maddie, and Syrup, the lack of screenshots make it difficult to discover if David was using a fake identity to lure in Maddie, or if Maddie simply had the intent of luring David in to begin with. David never talks, Maddie doesn't seem fully honest, and while Syrup has some insightful information, what she gives isn't quite enough to reach a verdict. Luckily, there's one more place we can look: the past. As I stated previously, when it comes to predators, manipulators, or abusers, there's almost always a pattern of behavior that can be seen in past and future victims. Meaning that when a victim comes out, it's not usually the first or only victim. It's just the first victim that spoke up. So first, we'll start looking into David's past. And there's not much to work with. Okay, so everything that can be found regarding any of David's sketchy actions were found by DaftPina in his video about the TinaFate catfish situation. He even got screenshots from David that could be traced back to 2018. Only, this and the other examples Daft used don't prove a whole lot. First, the screenshots. These screenshots were supposed to be examples of David e-dating, using his fake persona of being a girl.
Public tweets pointing to from the email led me to talking to someone who was scammed by him around 2018. As it turned out, David e-dated 2 people, or pretending to be a Japanese woman with 2 sisters.
But when we look at the screenshots Daft provides, they really don't say anything other than David was pretending to be a girl. There's no flirting or even implication of an attraction in these conversations, let alone anything similar to the DMs with Maddie. Hell, one of the screenshots clearly shows that David is in a chat with 4 other people, based on the fact that the blurred icons in this screenshot are different colors. That would imply that one of these examples occurred in a chat room, which would be an odd place to e-date. Unless David was e-dating all 4 of them, I don't think this could be considered e-dating either. If he was e-dating all 4 of them, I really want to see those DMs, because I would love to know how that went down. Now, this proves that David was using a fake persona before 2019, which is when David claimed he started doing it. But pretending to be a girl for a year longer than someone said does not mean they have a history of predation. Let's see what else is there. Apparently, these DMs as well as a story of David scamming someone out of money in TF2 merch were sent to Daft in an email. Okay, great! An email means a testimony. What did they say? Daft doesn't show the email. That doesn't give me much to work with either. If these accusations were true, why aren't we being given the evidence for it? There's no reason Daft couldn't show the email of the person who sent the info and hid their information. Hell, he even showed an email previously from one of David's friends, prior to revealing David's identity. So why wasn't the email or the details from David's supposed victims shown? Next, Daft shows a tweet by someone saying that they had a friend who was scammed out of thousands of dollars by David. Now that's also a serious allegation, except there's no proof or details of the story. The guy who made the post was also asked to provide proof and didn't do so. And when I reached out to them myself asking about their claim, I got no answer. So the other example of David scamming someone is a tweet by a guy who knows a guy who got scammed by David and can't prove it. Another example is from Veritas Joe, stating that David had no problem catfishing multiple people and coercing them into vulnerable positions that they would not put themselves in if they knew who David was.
I see there are a lot of people saying this should have and could have been handled privately, and while there are things that should be handled privately that people have absolutely no business butting into, this was a situation where someone clearly had no problem catfishing multiple people and further coercing them into vulnerable positions they probably would not have put themselves in if they knew who this person was.
But once again, there are no other victims that have come forward or examples that can be used to prove the statement. Despite saying there were multiple people David manipulated, why is there only one example that exists? When it came to how David handled the controversy before his identity was revealed, he apparently forbid anyone from talking about it in his Discord.
I also got in contact with moderators, both former and current. David would tell him to keep the drama under wraps, forbidding people to talk about the I'm sorry posts within the server.
So, from the sounds of things, David was trying to silence anyone who spoke about it in his Discord, which honestly is pretty sketchy. But there's something wrong with the screenshot Daft uses. If you actually read the Discord post, it specifically says, "Any further talk about Tuna's posting from a year ago will result in immediate punishment." But David's post apologizing for his relationship with Maddie was not a year prior to Daft's involvement. It was 2 months prior, which would mean this Discord message likely wasn't referring to the I'm sorry post by David, as Daft says. So we can't even say David was trying to silence people about bringing up his controversy. If anything, this Discord message refers to the time where David said the N-word, which did happen a year ago. The only thing that can be confirmed by someone is that David ditched his Discord server and community when word got out about his actual identity. This was said by Charmhung, who was one of the mods in David's Discord server. Now, this is a very douchey move by David. Abandoning his Discord and leaving the mods to pick up the pieces from the mess David left is incredibly irresponsible and immature. But of all the other things Daft tries to pin on David, other than lying to Maddie, this is the only thing he can actually prove. Nothing else in David's history implies that this was a pattern of behavior for David. So this brings me back to my earlier question. Why is Maddie the only instance in David's history that displays predation? Well, to answer that question, we need to look into Maddie's history. I want to give a warning. From this point onward, I'll be going over testimonies of manipulation, emotional abuse, stalking, and attempted sexual advances. If these are subjects you have trouble handling, I'd advise you to stop the video. I want to say moving forward that I was given consent to show all the DMs and conversations I gathered from interviewing people in this video. So the first instance I will talk about took place on a Discord server ran by Twitter user Ivy, or NeatGF. The situation started from December 2021 to February 2022, 6 months after Maddie interacted with David. It was brought to public attention by Ivy's husband Lynn V, who made a Twitter PSA of sorts briefly going over what happened in his server, warning people to be wary of a girl named Maddie who lies about their age to get into sexual relationships with adults. This was actually mentioned in Daft's video on TinaFate, where he showed the Twitter PSA made by Ivy's husband Lynn V. The issue is that Daft heavily glosses over the post and fails to look into it further, which will prove to be a heavy oversight. The PSA itself says the following: "For the sake of protecting other adults, we had a run-in with a person named Maddie. They randomly showed up in our group and started flirting with everyone that was female and getting involved with a lot of people, only for it to turn out to be a minor. Me and Ivy were not involved with them sexually, cause we both thought they were annoying, but she roped a lot of our friends into this. They are actually also the same minor that fucked over TinaFate. Kinda funny I didn't see it sooner." To prove the TinaFate statement, Lynn showed a screenshot of Discord DMs from Maddie saying that they were in fact the same person who was in a relationship with TinaFate, and stated that the speech patterns and cleanliness are the same as well. After this, Lynn goes into a brief descriptor of Maddie, saying, "They are a minor and catfish that constantly goes for 20-plus-year-old adults with clout and high follower accounts. They are generally very annoying and have said very disgusting things to Ivy, me, and my friends." As a side note, I was able to find an example of this by looking through the tweets of Maddie's old accounts. The account in question here was Savvy628. Here she made a sexual comment towards a female Twitter user, and that user's husband basically told Maddie to cut the shit and back off from his wife. I will link the PSA in the description below so you can see some of the other details. But the last thing I want to show is that according to Lynn, Maddie made multiple Twitter and Discord accounts to get around blocks meant to keep Maddie out. This is interesting, as Maddie used alt accounts to get around David's blocks as well. In this particular scenario, there are 3 testimonies I received from people that were in the now deleted Discord server. They belong to Lynn V, the person who made the post, Ivy, the creator of the Discord server this happened in, and a member who wishes to remain anonymous, who we will call Genevieve, who was actually the one in the DM where Maddie confessed to being the minor who interacted with TinaFate. The first person I talked to, Lynn V, initially didn't have a lot more to add that was not in the PSA. But one detail that I feel is important to bring up is that Maddie was not just lying about her age, she was also lying about her identity. According to Lynn V, Maddie was trying to pass as a cis female, and did so by sending images of breasts to people, which were not actually hers and were found on Reddit. At some point, Maddie confessed to being trans to Ivy and Lynn, and were supposed to keep it a secret. But when they found out what Maddie was doing to other members of the server, they made the info public to keep their members informed. It was after this Maddie revealed everything she was lying about and was kicked from the server. So while this is interesting information, Lynn V did not have a lot of contact with Maddie, but he directed me to Ivy, who had more experiences with them. Based off of Ivy's words, the sexual behavior started on a Not Safe for Work channel on Ivy's Discord server. This channel was blocked from minors, and Maddie was only able to get in because she lied about her age. According to Ivy, the channel was just used to repost Not Safe for Work art that is available on Twitter, so it wasn't like there was anything people couldn't easily find themselves. This, as well as Ivy's friends valuing anonymity, was one of the reasons proof of age, such as providing an ID, was not required. If it was revealed that someone was lying about their age, they were immediately banned from the server. Maddie was the only person this happened to, though. I'm making this statement because I don't want people to believe that Ivy was just letting anyone in some kind of spicy server where people were exchanging nudes and flirting with each other. The Discord was meant for people to chill and talk about art, not to be used as a dating site. When asked about the behavior of Maddie sending pictures of breasts that Lynn had described, Ivy stated this was true, saying Maddie sent them in the Not Safe for Work channel and the server, which seems to have been unprovoked. Ivy admitted to not being too knowledgeable about Maddie's behavior in DMs with some of the people she approached sexually, but believed she may have tried to send more pictures before people knew who Maddie really was. Next, I asked about an aspect of David's testimony, where he stated that Maddie was the initiator of the relationship and was the one to escalate things as well, and I wanted to know if this matched Maddie's behavior in Ivy's Discord. Ivy replied as follows: "Yes, that fits her behavior. She was the approacher when it came to DM conversations between her and the girls in my server. She seemed to have a habit of spamming friend requests at people within the first day of being in my server, which some people said made them uncomfortable, and that her chats were making them uncomfortable." Details of these conversations are not fully known to Ivy, since when she revealed the news of Maddie's actual age and identity, many people were upset and disturbed, so she didn't want to pry too much into something that left people so bothered. Now, while the details of the interactions that happened between most of Ivy's friends are unclear, I was able to go into detail about her personal interactions with Maddie. According to Ivy, she interacted with Maddie a lot, which largely seems to be because Maddie adored her. Maddie was constantly trying to get Ivy's attention to the point of spamming her DMs. When Ivy tried to ignore the messages from Maddie, Maddie would try to sad bait replies from her. Even after talking to Maddie about how uncomfortable this behavior made her, it persisted until Ivy cut Maddie off. But it turns out there were other reasons for Maddie getting kicked from the server besides lying about her age and sending explicit pictures to the Discord channel. You see, while Maddie adored Ivy, she hated her then boyfriend Lynn V, and constantly talked poorly about him behind his back, even if Ivy was present. This was another behavior that when Maddie was told to stop, she wouldn't. Also, other server members were getting tired of Maddie's toxic behavior, as many people didn't like her presence because she was pretty rude to people. From the sounds of it, there were a lot of reasons for Maddie to be banned from the server, and the revealing of Maddie's attempts at sexual behavior was the straw that broke the overworked camel's back. But even when the camel's back was broken, Maddie was still willing to kick sand in its face. Maddie immediately started vilifying Ivy after this happened, telling people Ivy was evil along with the people in her server for no apparent reason. She did this by making multiple alternative accounts and messaging Ivy saying hateful things about her and Lynn. These alternate accounts were shown in Lynn's PSA, which were also the multiple accounts Lynn showed Maddie had made to get around blocks meant to keep her out. While these alt accounts are deleted, I was able to find some of these tweets using the Wayback Machine, which helps provide more proof of Maddie's harassment. These tweets included publicly calling Lynn V a misogynist and a crappy game dev, calling Ivy a whore and a lolicon, and saying that their relationship with each other was going to fail. Reminder, these were all public where everyone could see and believe it. But one thing both Lynn V and Ivy both confirmed was that Maddie tried to accuse them of being pedophiles. This accusation, according to both Lynn and Ivy, was due to them allowing lolly postings on the server. While we still have another testimony to look at, I want to pause for a moment and bring attention to Ivy's experience with Maddie, as when we look at it, we find multiple parallels to what David mentioned in his testimony. When David initially stopped replying to Maddie, she started spamming replies in his DMs to get his attention, which is what Ivy said happened to her. Next, when David still didn't reply, Maddie tried to sadbait him into unblocking her, which is similar to Maddie trying to sadbait Ivy into getting a response from her. But lastly is the wrath. Maddie tried to cancel David for grooming, which Maddie had initially stated to me herself she didn't think what happened was grooming, and Syrup had stated it seemed Maddie was doing it as revenge for getting blocked. With Ivy's situation, Maddie tried to harass Ivy and Lynn and called them pedophiles after getting rightfully kicked from Ivy's server. Now what David did was disgusting, there's no denying that. But considering that Maddie was willing to lie in an attempt to publicly harass and defame Ivy and Lynn for kicking her from their server, something that Ivy had every right to do, it really makes the idea of Maddie lying to Syrup about David being the initiator and trying to cancel him over being blocked more believable. So Ivy's and Lynn's testimonies were helpful, but they both seem to stay out of the personal interactions with Maddie for the most part. This is where Genevieve's testimony helps shed some light on what Maddie was doing. According to Genevieve, she was a friend of Maddie's, and described their initial interactions with him as follows. We bonded over both being girls that liked other girls. Conversations were mostly just friendly with the occasional flirty comment at first. That first part got my attention, so I asked if there was a point where Maddie started changing her approach. This is what they said. Eventually, she began jokingly, at first, and then seriously, later on, asking for a girls-only harem channel. Come to find out, this was just for her to figure out who she could easily solicit nudes from, myself and Ivy included. Yeah, so just want to reiterate, this was never what Ivy's Discord server was intended for. So Maddie's behavior here is not a reflection of what was normally happening in the Discord channel. Next, I asked how Maddie went about soliciting nudes from people, if it was upfront or a bit more sneaky. Genevieve said this. She straight up asked one of my friends, who will remain anonymous. Like, the first DM was nude soliciting. I was a lot more susceptible to her trying to solicit me for sex, because I was single and desperate, unlike most everyone else she went after. This seems to imply that Maddie would even try to go after people who were in relationships, regardless of their sexual orientation, which, considering she tried to get Ivy's attention while in a relationship with Lynn, and made the sexual comment to another person who was married, checks out. Genevieve's and Maddie's relationship seemed to be mostly casual, with some sexual aspects here and there. According to Genevieve, Maddie would come to her when horny to sext, but once the feelings subsided, they had normal conversations. The sexting was stated to not be taken seriously, consisting of only dirty talk without any pictures being sent. This was occurring before Maddie confessed to lying about her age, being 17 instead of 18, as she had stated in the server multiple times. I asked about the allegations of Maddie sending pictures of other women's breasts, which she claimed to be hers, to other people. Genevieve confirmed this to be true. In fact, one of the reasons she found out the breasts didn't belong to Maddie was because the pictures Maddie used contained breasts of different sizes. Honestly, I find this kind of funny. It's not the oversight I would have expected from someone who's trying to lie about their identity. When Genevieve noticed the inconsistency, she asked Maddie what was up with the pictures, where Maddie confessed she was actually trans, but trying to fool people into believing she was cis. The last conversation between the two occurred after Maddie had a falling out with the server. According to Genevieve, Maddie had tried to get Ivy to break up with Lynn and date Genevieve instead, which made Lynn kick Maddie from the server. Now, the details of this particular claim are unclear. Ivy never felt Maddie really tried to break them up, but as I stated earlier, Maddie talked poorly of Lynn to Ivy. And Ivy was able to confirm that Maddie made a comment saying Ivy should date Genevieve. I only bring this up because between the 3 testimonies from this Discord server, there are inconsistencies about what really got Maddie banned. One says it was the age lie, one said it was the catfishing and being rude to other server members, and one said it was for trying to ruin the relationship of the server owner. My interpretation of this is that it was all the above, and each person just had one bullet point from the list that they feel was the biggest factor to Maddie's ban. But once Maddie was banned, she went into Genevieve's DMs and confessed on all of her lies, the biggest one being that she wasn't an adult, but was 17, and the same person who was in a relationship with TinaFate. It's here I want to bring attention to one of the DM screenshots Genevieve took from this conversation. While the screenshot with Maddie admitting she's the person who had a relationship with TinaFate is interesting, I think the second screenshot with Maddie admitting her age is more telling, although I'm talking about what Maddie said after that. It's here Maddie makes multiple statements, saying she keeps lying about her age, that she's currently cheating on somebody, but let's read the last 2 lines of text, where Maddie says the following. Though, you did say you had a crush on me, and now I'm realizing how atrocious this must be, since you're an adult. If you remember, when Maddie first disclosed her age to David, well, her fake age, since she was 16 at the time, and not 17 like she said, she immediately followed up, saying that she was just now realizing that by being under 18, their conversation might be bad. There is no way Maddie lied about her age to take part in a relationship with an adult for the second time, and just now realized that what she was doing was wrong. This feigning ignorance of the gravity of her actions seems to be an attempt to make people go easy on her when she is caught. And those are the main aspects of Genevieve's testimony, but it is not where the subject of Maddie's actions in Ivy's Discord server ends. As it turns out, Maddie has her own, albeit vague, testimony of sorts regarding what happened. The first testimony came from when I asked her about Lynn V's PSA. I was honestly struggling how to ask about this, since I didn't want to make it seem like I already knew about Maddie's history, otherwise she might try to change her story to match with what I knew. But Daft's video on TinaFate actually allowed me to do this, as he mentioned the post in his video without actually looking into it, which made it believable that I knew of the post's existence, but not its contents. When I mentioned Lynn V's post to Maddie, she panicked and said the following. The shit I did with Lynn and his girlfriend have nothing to do with the David situation. That was a mistake I made a year ago and 6 months after David catfished me. I was in a vulnerable state and let my sexual thoughts do the thinking. I don't want people to know me. I made absolutely sure that the accounts that Lynn posted weren't related to me anymore. I don't want people to find me and attack me for things I did as a stupid minor, and I'd like to just live my life. The David situation I can talk about, but Lynn literally found out my address, my legal name, and information about my family. He threatened to fucking dox me. Lynn acted like I was just some villain because I lied about being 6 months younger than I was, but he's a full-on misogynist, racist, and overall fucking asshole. I did something very wrong, but to everyone else that saw his tweet, he's the hero. Now, she seemed to calm down when I told her I would not pry further, and Lynn said in his post he would not expose Maddie's current Twitter. It was here where she explained the reason for her panicking, saying the following. The thing is, I'm close friends with many content creators at this point, and what I mean is, I have a reputation to maintain. I don't want people that don't know finding out and then hating me over things I've done over a year ago and have matured from. After this conversation, Maddie posted a comment in Daft's video on TinaFate. In one reply to the comment, she said the following thing about Lynn. This is the second testimony, in a way. It's not David I'm traumatized over. It's the fact that I didn't learn my lesson, and last year when I was 17, I lied about my age again. But this time my consequence was being nearly doxxed by someone. The guy who tweeted that also had my legal name, my address, and information about my family that he threatened me with and scared me half to death. So, if you notice in Maddie's retelling of things, she basically said Lynn V threatened to dox her over lying about her age, and left out basically everything else she did in the Discord regarding catfishing people to get nudes from them, being rude to people in the server, and harassing the server owner as well as her boyfriend when they kicked her from the server. But the aspect of doxing is still serious, so I made sure to ask both Lynn V and Ivy for their side of the story. According to both of them, the doxing was a bit of a last straw when dealing with Maddie. Remember, Maddie was harassing both Lynn and Ivy after being kicked from the server, and from the looks of things, after Lynn V made his post about Maddie. According to Lynn, the harassment, which included the tweets I showed earlier, lasted about a week, and Lynn and Ivy's patience was wearing thin. So, in an attempt to hold her accountable, the two of them found Maddie's information based on info she gave in past conversations, her profiles, and a couple of Google searches. But the purpose of this was not to threaten to post Maddie's info to the public. The purpose was to show that they had enough information to call Maddie's parents and tell them what their kid was doing on the internet. Both said they made it clear that they were not going to dox Maddie, and looking through one of Maddie's throwaway accounts, I was able to find a message of Ivy stating this. Hell, Ivy even told me she never really planned on doing this. She was just hoping it'd be enough to make Maddie stop harassing them. Using the Wayback Machine, I was able to find out what Lynn V had said to Maddie. Here's what it says. Also, by the way, we have your full docs, and we aren't afraid to use it to call your parents and report your behavior. I won't dox you because I'm not that evil. Reading this statement, we can see that Lynn clearly said directly to Maddie that he was not going to make this information public. He was just going to call Maddie's parents and tell them what she's been doing. Maddie responded to this claiming that Lynn was threatening to give out her information, and continues to say Lynn V threatened to dox them to this very day. To strengthen the point that Lynn and Ivy were not going to post this information, Lynn had even told me in the beginning of our conversations that he had Maddie's IRL docs, and that he was never going to show it to anyone. He even told me he wasn't proud of what he did. Personally, I don't even think it's that bad. The kid wanted to pretend to be an adult, so they should learn what it's like to take accountability. There's one last thing I want to add for all of this. Maddie's actions caused a lot of issues for Lynn, his now wife Ivy, and his only friend group. He even lost some friends in this situation. Some people might think that Lynn took things too far. I personally don't, but that's not the point. But let's look at things from his perspective. Some random person came into your life, harasses your girlfriend for attention, is rude in a Discord server to you and friends of yours, talks shit about you behind your back to your girlfriend, uses the Discord as a dating site and tries to catfish people for nudes, causes you to lose friends, discover they were lying about their age to talk to adults, which could potentially get them into legal trouble, discover this person has done this before to a famous artist and is still doing it, and when you make this public to make sure nobody else has to go through this, they go out of their way to defame you and harass you and your girlfriend. With all of this considered, is what Lynn did in response, which is threatening to call Maddie's parents, really that extreme? I'd say no. And that is everything I was able to find from looking into Lynn V's post. From this example alone, we have cases of Maddie trying to initiate sexual relationships with adults by lying about their age and identity, trying to manipulate adults for attention, being incredibly spiteful towards people who either stopped talking to her or kept them from continuing their honestly predatory actions, and also blatantly lying about other people she doesn't like in order to make herself look like a victim. Okay, so another edit. Actually, it turns out Ivy's server was not the only one Maddie was active on during this time. Maddie was also in another server run by Syrup using the same Savvy628 alias. And from these screenshots, we can see Maddie tried to get Syrup to let her back in after being blocked. When Syrup stated that Maddie was flirting with adults and making people uncomfortable, she again played dumb and said she's just a lovey person and that she isn't trying to hit on anyone. Syrup brought up that earlier Maddie asked someone to snuggle and then complained when she got rejected due to her age, to which Maddie said that it was just meant to be a joke. Sure. She then said, and I quote, "I hate being looked down upon all the fucking time because oh no, I can't legally have sex with adults." After ranting about how people treat her because of her age, she became apologetic and begged Syrup not to kick her from the server, saying she would stop flirting with people, and that she didn't want to upset people, and that she just wanted friendship, promising she would be better. Honestly, it seemed reminiscent of how she talked to David after being blocked. Needless to say, Syrup said no. Some of you might argue that because this happened after Maddie's situation with David, that she was vulnerable, and this should not be an example of what Maddie usually does. Maddie even said this as well. That might hold weight if it wasn't for the fact that Maddie has actually done this before, even before she met David. When looking at the comments and retweets of David's apology post, I was able to find another Twitter user who had stated that they knew Maddie, and that they have tried to get into relationships a lot before. They explained further, stating that they knew Maddie from a Discord server they shared with her, and that she has a track record of trying to flirt with people much older than her. She was also so clingy to people that it reached the point of stalking. They even tried to quote Maddie, stating she said something like, "I never got nudes from older people, but I offer it to them." By looking into this further, I was able to get into contact with someone from this Discord server who used to be a friend of Maddie's. According to the ex-friend, who we will refer to as AnonA, their events with Maddie took place in 2020, 1 year before Maddie had even interacted with David. Let's see what they had to say.
I'm not saying that it was right for David at all to have a relationship with someone who was underage.
Of course.
But she obviously did, make that up to make herself appear older. And she's done that before.
She's lied about her age before to you?
She has.
If you don't mind me asking, what was the situation she put you in before?
So she had, obviously, she lied about her age. She said she was 17, even though she was 15. Even though, I told her, I was like, I don't care if you're 15 or if you're 17. Like, please don't, flirt with the adults in the server.
So we said she was 15 at the time. So that would have been a year before the TinaFate situation happened.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's around the time when I met her.
So when you first met her, I'm assuming that was in 2020?
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
because that's when I started talking to that group, and she was already a part of that group as well.
So she went into the group and was flirting with people that were older since 2020.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And, I'm not sure if she had done it before my group, but I don't think that you just, start doing it one day. If that makes any sense.
Well,
so...
Oh, go on. My bad.
So I'm guessing that she's done it before 2020, but that was my specific instance with her, was around maybe 2020.
So, on that note, did she ever try to get pictures from other people, or was it only flirting?
She had tried to get pictures from me, like nudes. It was very uncomfortable to me, which is why I told her, like, I am very flattered, because she would always, compliment me, and, if I'm complimented, like, basic, like, you're pretty.
Yeah.
It's fine, and no matter who it's from, I'm gonna be grateful for the compliment, because that's all it is a compliment.
Mm-hmm.
And so I told her, because she would always, compliment, like, oh, you're so pretty, or like, your hair is so nice today, because we did have like a selfies channel in the server, and sometimes I would post, and so all I thought it was like harmless compliments, because, it was, we were all friends, and this kind of like the type of things that friends will tell you is like, oh, you're pretty, oh, you look nice today, stuff like that. So that's all I thought it was. But then once she started asking me for nudes, I definitely just like, that was like where my line was drawn. And then she also like was flirting with me. And I told her, I was like, whether it's a joke or not, like, I really don't want to be like a part of this. Because it really makes me feel uncomfortable. I feel like very weird about it.
Uh-huh.
And so I wasn't really entertaining her flirting with me, her asking, for nudes and stuff like that. I told her whether it's a joke or not, like, I'm not like, I'm very flattered that you think I'm pretty, but just the whole like flirting thing and the nudes thing, it was like a very big no for me.
Absolutely. Did she try to send you photos of herself at all?
No, actually. She had asked me if I wanted them, maybe once or twice, and I told her I would obviously, no. And also, at the time, I was dating someone in the server.
Did Maddie know that?
Yes, and we were in a happy relationship. I said, first of all, you're a minor. I don't flirt with minors because, not only the repercussions for that, but I just like at a very basic sense, like I just think it's wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. So just for some clarification, Maddie's birthday is in late June, and she was 16 when she talked to David during early June of 2021. So if she was 15 when she interacted with AnonA, the interaction would have had to occur before late June of 2020. This would mean that Maddie has been lying about her age and soliciting nudes for at least a year before even meeting David. Let's see what else is said.
She has a pretty manipulative personality. She had multiple times admittedly faked panic attacks to me. Like, she had told me, like, I can't breathe, like, I'm having a panic attack, I'm feeling, she was feeling, intense bouts of anxiety. While she does have anxiety, she had admitted to me that she had faked those panic attacks, which was honestly one of the things that almost like broke me, because I do suffer from extreme panic attacks, and she knows that. And she knew that it was a way to get me to sympathize with her, especially because I do have very intense anxiety. A lot of my panic attacks lead to asthma attacks, which are really never fun. And so her, I think knowing that I was very prone to panic attacks, because they do happen pretty often. And the fact that I had dealt with trauma as a child, and into my high school years, she knew, what she was doing. She knew that, if she had faked a panic attack, she would get my sympathy, she would get attention. And which is something, honestly, that I probably would have given to her as a friend in the first place, because I am a pretty caring person. So it's not like she had to garner for my attention. But yeah, so knowing that, I was prone to anxiety attacks, panic attacks, she took advantage of that and had faked a few to me, and then later admitted, like, I was not being truthful, I was faking it. So it was really, I couldn't handle it anymore. That's when I brought it up to the group. And the group they were like, yeah, she's been kind of making us feel very uncomfortable too. And also, she was flirting with me, like, in public, like in the Discord, and then also like tried to flirt with me in my DMs. So I just felt like, that server was honestly one of my safe places, because I was going through a lot in 2020. And it was like I couldn't even like go to my safe space anymore, I said, with all of that, I just like, we had to kick you from the server, because we can't tolerate the behavior anymore. And it was just one of those situations where it was just making everybody feel comfortable, her being there. And and she, at first, she was, like, I'm sorry, like, I won't do it again, please let me back. And I said, I'm sorry, like, our decision is final. And then she started accusing me of being transphobic when we kicked her out. She was like, the entire, like, server is, like, transphobic, like, you're doing this because I'm trans. You're doing this because I'm not a cis woman. And honestly, like, a lot of the people on the server didn't even know. So it just kind of brought out, like, another side of her that was less, trying to beg for attention or a close friendship, and more of the side of her that was angry at us, and she got really angry, then she got really apologetic again, and then she was like, okay, well, if you want, like, I'll never speak to you again. Actually, it was very, like, similar to her messages with David, if I recall. It was like,
I was thinking the same thing with what you were just describing.
Yeah, it was like almost the language in and of itself was pretty much almost the same. Like, if we ever, are in, like, the same public place together, like, I won't say anything more than hi or hello, so it was actually very similar to David's, her messages with David, where she was very apologetic, and some part of me, like, really wants to believe that she was sorry.
Okay, so the next bit of audio was recorded while AnonA was driving, and because it was very late for me while having the conversation, I wasn't too worried about the audio quality, so I'm sorry about that. But for a bit of context for this next part, after Maddie's relationship with David fell through, Maddie tried to get back into being friends with AnonA. Here's what Anon had to say about it. So you said when Maddie joined back into the server, you didn't see the same problems you saw before?
She didn't join back into our server because our server had disbanded by then,
okay.
Since the owner was called out. So yeah, basically it was none of the flirting behavior anymore, none of the asking for nudes. But when I had said, thank God you're not the other Maddie that I know, because she was pretty much the only other Maddie that I had become friends with. She told me, she was like, I haven't been completely honest with you. And it was like at that moment that I knew, like, she got me, and so it was, a lot of it was just like I felt really, because, I had been lied to by her for the second time, and she was now asking me to be friends again. So you can understand, like, why I probably, like, I wouldn't want to be friends with her again, especially since she lied to me the first time, caused me to drop my safe space, and then coming back and starting out the whole entire interaction with a lie that she was this different Maddie, So it was just like, it was too much for me to handle, and I try to surround myself with people that make me feel, stable, especially anxiety disorder. So a lot of it was like, I told her, I was like, I can't have you in my life again, because the last time you were in my life, it was like, now I just kind of have, it's partly from her, it's partly from a few people from my past, but like, I just am very slow to trust people now. And it is partly because of that situation, because of what she did. So I told her, I was like, you know, this is what you did to me. Like, this is what you did to the group. And she was like, I don't remember it that way. And trying to say that she didn't. And I was like, no, this is what you did. And finally she admitted to it. And she was like, I'm so sorry. Like, I was going through a lot then, but like, I would like to be friends again. I was like, I can't make that happen. And like, I'm very sorry. And I hope, you know, things work out for you, but I can't let that happen again, because it was too much for me to handle the first time, and it's gonna be too much for me to handle now. I told her, I was like, I can't trust you as a friend anymore. So, that was the last time that I ever spoke to Maddie, but she was like very apologetic about it. And then when I told her, I was like, no, I can't be friends with you. She got really angry, like she kind of usually does. As far as I know, like, she did that with David, and then she did that with me before David, and she did that with me after David. So it was like the way that she was apologizing just didn't feel sincere, because she would get angry when I told her I couldn't be her friend anymore. And then finally she was like, I'm sorry, like, I'll leave you alone.
So, after listening to Anon's testimony, we can see a lot of parallels between what occurred in both Anon's and Ivy's Discord servers. The lying about the age, the behavior, making people uncomfortable, asking for nudes from people, treating the server like a dating site, lying, manipulating people for attention, and getting angry and spouting bullshit when she doesn't get her way, all match. And honestly, it matches with what David said as well. But we actually aren't done. There is one last testimony that I want to go over, by someone who was stalked by Maddie, who was also mentioned in Lynn B's post. This person also wishes to remain anonymous, so we will refer to them as Kat. Before we start, I want it to be clear that Kat was never friends with Maddie, and she even stated so to me. As far as Kat was concerned, Maddie was just someone who kept contacting them. Kat's connection with Maddie started back in the summer of 2021, before the allegations regarding David had come up. Maddie followed Kat on Twitter and replied to all of her posts, and seemed a bit flirty at times when doing so. During this time, Kat had a Ko-Fi and noticed that Maddie donated to it, for which Kat thanked her personally for doing. This is what Kat thinks opened the door for Maddie to try to get to her. For a little bit after this, things were quiet. But this all changed when Kat randomly came across David's apology post on July 28th, and realized that the person David was talking to was Maddie, the same person donating to her Ko-Fi. Shortly after finding the post, Kat got tagged in a tweet by Maddie. The tweet had Maddie stating that she was deleting her Twitter since it had been ruining her life. Which, yeah, it'll do that, but Maddie played a big role in that as well. She also listed her Discord at the time, asking if Kat would follow her. A couple days later, Kat got a Twitter DM from one of Maddie's alt accounts, asking if Kat remembered her at all. If you look at the alt account, which is MadelineK628, you'll see it's the same name and profile pic from Maddie's comment on Daft's video. Quick note, when looking at the screenshot of this DM, it says that Maddie's alt was made of December 2021, which would have been several months after the day Maddie deleted her account, MadSK628. But by looking into the alt account, I found it had existed since before the summer of 2021, so it's likely that Kat's timeline is correct. Kat continued to ignore Maddie's messages, but then found out Maddie was still donating to her Ko-Fi just to talk with her, starting from June 21st, 2021 to July 30th, 2021. While the year is not listed, we know that Maddie deleted the account MadSK628 shortly after David made his I'm sorry post on July 28th, 2021. Maddie references this deletion in the message on the bottom of the screenshot, which is listed as July 30th. So it stands to reason that this message was made shortly after the deletion of Maddie's Twitter. Now I want to bring attention to the first message Maddie sends, which is on June 21st. Here Maddie offers her Discord name and said she would love to be better friends. If you recall David's testimony, he said that Maddie approached him through his Patreon and asked to be friends. Then things went to Discord. In this message, we see the same exact approach, exactly 1 week after Maddie was blocked on David's Discord. This leads me to believe Maddie was attempting to do the same thing with Kat. Back to the testimony. After seeing these messages, Kat blocked Maddie everywhere she could. Things were quiet for a while until Kat started getting new replies on Twitter from someone who seemed similar to Maddie. She then had someone join her Discord who had a similar name to the Twitter account that was replying to her tweets. Kat was skeptical of this person, keeping an eye on their actions and ignoring the constant friend requests she was receiving. Eventually, Kat felt bad for ignoring the new person and accepted their friend request, getting a reply immediately after. After some short conversations, the new person said they had to confess something. If you haven't already guessed, this person was Maddie. And that was the confession, which did not surprise Kat, or probably anyone else watching this, at all. After Maddie revealed her identity, she spent close to an hour trying to convince Kat that she wasn't the same person she used to be, and starts talking about her life in a way that honestly comes off as guilt-trippy and manipulative, like Maddie's trying to get Kat to sympathize and feel bad for her. Since I am sure some of you are just listening to this, and not watching the screen where I'm showing the DMs, I'll read some of them to you to give you an idea. But I recommend reading through everything yourself when you can. Let's start. I'm saying just understand me when I say I'm not the same person. And believe me if I have been known to lie, it doesn't feel like less than a year ago, it feels like it's been ages. And it's even more upsetting because Ivy was the name of someone else that I was really close to that abandoned me after my attempt. I don't mean to seem like I'm playing victim because I sure as hell feel like I am right now. But whether I do something wrong or not, people leave. And I felt as if I didn't want to be around people my own age because teenagers are fucking stupid. Like, goddamn. They put on this facade like they love me so much. And right when I start to trust them, there's that cute little block button. I just want to move on. And it's been really difficult. I fixed a lot. I at least tell myself that. Looking back is what makes me doubt it. I don't want to go through the drama anymore. I just want to vibe in spaces with other people now that I'm an adult and just forget what I've done. The feeling of regret is the most strong pain a person can feel is what I'm told. And I can tell you that pain has come into my mind more times than I can count. Another thing I want to bring attention to is that Maddie tries to paint Lynn as some evil person while talking to Kat, saying that he's not what he seems and that he found her personal information after she was already gone, which based off of Lynn and Ivy's testimonies is not true and leaves out crucial context on the matter. It seems like she's hell-bent on making Lynn look bad. In between each of these messages, Kat remained calm and honestly gave good and fair replies, stating multiple times that even though Maddie was 18, she still had a lot of work to do on herself, and she was not comfortable talking to Maddie, and that Maddie should have known this considering Kat blocked her multiple times. Unfortunately, this didn't seem to be working, as Maddie still would not take no for an answer, saying things like, "What harm could I even cause at this point?" And, "I don't want to do this again. I don't want to lose people anymore. I don't want other people to feel as if I need to be avoided again. That feeling is unbearable." In response, Kat stated that Maddie needs to work through the difficult times of losing relationships if she wants to grow, and if she still needs the approval of others to accept that she's changed, then she still needs to grow. After that, Kat asked to be left alone, blocked Maddie, banned her from the server, and took away the invite link from her Discord, fearing Maddie would try to come back with a new account. This happened in September 2022, and since then Kat hasn't seen any suspicious behavior, but she is still being attentive. The last thing that Kat wanted to say about the situation is that Maddie just seemed like a troubled kid with attachment issues. Maybe she doesn't have malicious intentions, but clearly she is mentally unwell, and is not aware of how her actions have been harmful to others. So with Kat, we see Maddie trying to get to them using a new account and identity, like she did with AnonA. And while I do believe Maddie has some regret for what she did, the way she talked to Kat seemed a lot like manipulative sad baiting, which Maddie had done with David, Ivy, and AnonA. So trying to manipulate people into relationships with them, romantic or not, is a clear constant with Maddie. And that is the last of our testimony. So you all may be thinking, okay Bandit, I get Maddie was a crappy person and all, but what does this have to do with anything? David still lied about his identity, received what he thought were nudes of a minor, and bailed on his community when shit hit the fan. So he should be held accountable for everything he did. And to that I'd say, you're exactly right. He was let off easy, and he does need to be held accountable for what he did. But just what he did, not what people think he did. When we look back to the testimonies of Maddie and David, there are 3 points that were conflicting. Who started being flirty, who started being sexual, and who initiated the trading of nudes. Maddie said multiple times that David initiated the relationship, but we also know that Maddie is a huge liar, who badmouths anyone who tried to call her out and tries to make herself look like the victim. We've seen this when she called Syrup nuts, which was over a conversation when Syrup jokingly said Luigi could be trans. I am not making this up. I could not make this up. We've also seen that she does whatever she can to make Lynn, the person who tried to warn people about Maddie, look like a horrible human being who doxed her solely for lying about her age. She even tried to use a screenshot of herself initiating the flirting, while trying to say David was the one who started it. So based on the screenshot and Maddie's history, she initiated the flirting. Not only that, but we also know that Maddie was always the first to try to be sexual to a lot of people she talked to, and both offered and asked for nudes based on her previous relationships. So to answer the question of who started being sexual and who started asking for nudes, based off of everything we've seen, it's safe to say it was Maddie, not David. This all means that David's testimonial of his interactions with Maddie checks out. Also, the fact David tried to leave the relationship would imply he didn't want to stay in the relationship, which is not characteristic of a predator who has someone willing to be sexual with them. Most people who talk about this case view David as some sort of predator who goes after children for fat material, and manipulated multiple people into vulnerable positions to do things they normally wouldn't. An example of this is Verdis Joe.
This was a situation where someone clearly had no problem catfishing multiple people and further coercing them into vulnerable positions they probably would not have put themselves in if they knew who this person was.
Daft tries to make him out to be someone scamming people out of money.
The victims gave him money as well as TF2 items, noting that David never spoke directly to them, rather using texts.
ThatCreepyReading says that if they never got involved, David would probably still be catfishing other people for nudes to this day.
And, you know, thank God that they did, because they were catfishing someone. Because if they didn't, no one would know. He'd probably still be doing it. Especially since they weren't willing to come out on their own.
Leo Convoy even says that they would not care if he died or killed himself, and stated that knowing people like David, there's more than one victim.
Now, by the way, but for the rest of the chat, I want to give my value about TinaFate. TinaFate was an adult, granted 2-year difference, but still an adult, who catfished a minor, meaning there was intent to deceive, to get nudes from the minor. I do not care if TinaFate was doxxed. I do not care if TinaFate gets hit by a truck. I don't care if TinaFate decides that he or she no longer wants to be part of this world's census. Don't care. That's my value. But in this situation, the problem is the deception is of malicious intent by nature, and knowing people like Tina, David, there's more than one. Because there's always more than one, which is one reason why I took issue with how this was handled overall.
But when we look at the history of both David and Maddie, Maddie is the one with a history of trying to manipulate people into getting into relationships with them. Saying David manipulated Maddie really falls flat when, based on her history with multiple people, Maddie went to David with the intent of getting into a sexual relationship and getting nudes from them. Once again, nobody put a gun to David's head and told him to go along with the relationship. Hell, he even said he was fine at first. And considering that multiple other people who were honest about their identities did not interact with Maddie in the same way, means David absolutely could have avoided the whole situation easily. But if we are really trying to pass justice here and properly hold people accountable, then it's important that we try to get an understanding of what went down instead of just assuming the worst, as doing so led people to accuse David of things that literally nobody can prove, and made it easier for Maddie to basically hide in the shadows to go after more people like she did in Ivy's server just 2 months after Daft got involved. Speaking of Daft's involvement, why don't we finally look at his side of things, which he goes into in his video on TinaFate. Here, we will go through different claims made in the video with the knowledge that we have now, and see how it compares to the narrative that Daft portrays. Now, before we start, I want to go over a few points Daft got right. First, a lot of people who talk about the TinaFate situation focus more on the believed 2-year age gap between David and what Maddie said her age was. The problem with this is that David still lied about his identity when initially accepting what he thought were nudes from someone, which is a predatory action no matter what David's intentions were. Second, AnonA, a drama/news YouTuber, oversimplified and downplayed what happened between David and Maddie, saying they were flirting rather than exchanging explicit photos. Lastly, David did not do anything to help his community when shit hit the fan. Although, to be fair, his life was falling apart and his family was potentially in danger, so his Discord likely was not on the top of his priority list. With that out of the way, let's start.
A catfish that sexted a minor but pretended to be a Japanese lesbian, only to reveal they were a cis dude all along. He even lied about being Japanese. Dang.
Okay, so within the first 15 seconds we already have Daft spouting an outright lie. David at no point in time ever said he was Japanese. For one, in the post Daft made on David, he showed that he used information from David's Discord server to find his Facebook, showing that David was from Dubai, went to school in the Philippines, and now lives in California. None of the information used to find David's identity says he was Japanese. If David had lied about being Japanese, wouldn't this have been something David would say regarding his past and places he's lived in? Second, literally 1 month before Daft ever got involved, David made a public tweet saying he was Filipino, not Japanese. Now on the surface this seems like an inconsequential thing to lie about, but it actually isn't, as the reason Daft is making this statement is actually far more disturbing than you'd expect, but we'll get into that later. Let's keep watching.
Further stating the minor stalking them, threatening to expose what they did. Originally Tina thought they were an adult, citing conversations in VC, but soon learned that wasn't the case.
Alright, so while Maddie is a compulsive, manipulative liar, she never threatened to expose what David did, and David never made a statement regarding this either. The DM that Daft shows is just Maddie begging not to be blocked anymore, so the statement also isn't true. Not too consequential, but still misinforming people. Moving on.
For 2 days, nothing would really happen. I wouldn't tweet, and Tina wouldn't tweet, as they were just on the server playing TF2, while server members just moved along.
Okay, so this also has no proof behind it. I know it seems like a stupid comment, but again, it will be important later.
If you remember back to David's tweet about
being scared to talk about it,
I contacted him on 4 separate occasions. Let's see, I sent him a friend request in Discord, and directly contacted him in Twitter DMs. Once, the day before his tweet about talking it out, the second, the day of, with the info I had at the time, knowing he was lying about his identity. Lastly, January 14, 2023, regarding the new info I got. He never responded, ever, to any of these.
Daft stated he tried to contact David on 4 separate occasions. Now when we look at the time that Daft first sent the DM, it was 1:59 PM in Texas, where Daft lives. Let's look at the other tweets Daft sent out. Using Harley TBS's video, I was able to find a tweet of Daft making an, air quotes, joke about David being racist, which is made at 6:09 in the afternoon in the UK, where Harley lives. UK time is 6 hours ahead of Texas, which would mean this comment was made at 12:09 in the afternoon. It also follows the other tweet about Daft asking why David's Discord is not working, which means the Discord tweet came out before the racist ad tweet. So both of these tweets were made around noontime in Texas. Later on, Daft makes another tweet comparing David to Lulaboo. And if you remember from the beginning of the video, Lulaboo was someone who was confirmed to be a sexual predator, manipulator, and scammer, with many people coming out about their actions. The tweet on Lulaboo was made on August 9th at 2:15 Eastern Time, which would be 1:15 Central Time. This means these tweets that Daft made provoking David, implying racism, and comparing him to a predator, were made before Daft even tried to reach out to David in DMs. And Daft proceeds to complain that David would not respond to him. Moving on.
I see there are a lot of people saying this should have and could have been handled privately, and while there are things that should be handled privately that people have absolutely no business butting into, this was a situation where someone clearly had no problem catfishing multiple people and further coercing them into vulnerable positions they probably would not have put themselves in if they knew who this person was. You know, another Twitter artist pretending to be an Asian woman for some reason. What an actual Twitter artist, Asian woman, can we get them some love? Like, please? So that's queerbait, race bait, and catfishing? Nah, this nigga's cooked.
Here, Daft states he tried to handle things privately, and Veritas Joe steps in to defend Daft, saying that something had to be done since David had no issue manipulating people into vulnerable positions. There is a problem with this statement. Based on Maddie's history, saying she was manipulated into sending nudes is not entirely true, and likely was only interacting with David for the sake of getting nudes from who she thought was a girl. This can be seen not only from the multiple people who I talked to that interacted with Maddie, but also from the fact that Maddie entered David's Patreon on June 3rd. And based on the testimonies we have, the nude exchanges started after the ages of each party were stated, which occurred on June 4th, 1 day later. If David was the kind of person to ask for nudes within 1 day of knowing somebody, something which appears as being very forward, I'd think there would be more examples of this happening. But despite the fact that Veritas says David did this to multiple people, he can't provide any other testimonies with proof of being scammed or manipulated by David. I even talked to Charmhung, a Discord mod for David's server that appeared in Daft's video, and asked if there were any points where he heard complaints about David being creepy or exhibiting suspicious behavior before the big drama went down. And Charmhung said no. Since the interactions with Maddie took place in David's Discord, wouldn't this also be the area where more cases would have occurred? So if there is no evidence on Twitter, and no examples that could be given by the person who moderated David's server, which is the same person Daft uses as a reference, where did these other cases of manipulation and scamming come from? Veritas then compared David to Lulaboo, the confirmed predator, for lying about his race, which we've already proven he didn't do, and lying about being a lesbian, which actually can't really be proven either since a sexual preference was never mentioned by David, and catfishing, which we can confirm. But remember that Lulaboo comparison. It'll be important later.
Within the DMs he didn't show, he was open to keeping the relationship a secret, and seemingly only ended it because the minor won the call. Because he couldn't do that as he was catfish, he quickly ended their sexting sessions and brought this to the public.
Daft stated that David was open to keeping the relationship a secret, but the DMs he shows don't actually prove this. I find this funny as Daft is trying to convince people of something that he could not find proof for, but if he just did a little better with his research, he could have absolutely found the DM proving this point. He's trying to mislead you, but doesn't realize he's actually right. He also stated that David seemed to end the relationship with Maddie because she wanted to voice chat with him, which would expose David as a catfish. Okay, so first of all, we all know this isn't true, as both David's friends and Maddie had stated that David would join voice chats and just use the text function.
Talking with a former mod, they said that Tina would never talk in voice chats, claiming to have had a broken microphone even when getting a new laptop.
Second, earlier in this video, Daft stated that David interacted with Maddie through voice chat, which was stated in David's I'm sorry post, and was one of the reasons David thought Maddie sounded like an adult.
Originally, Tina thought they were an adult, signing conversations in VC, but soon learned that wasn't the case.
Daft contradicted himself in his own video. Also, in my interview with Maddie, she herself stated she talked in voice chat with David, and he just used the text function. The reason why David's motive for leaving the relationship is important is that David stated he got uncomfortable with the relationship since he felt he did something wrong. Which, yeah, he fucked up big time. While we cannot prove this is really the case, ignoring David's testimony and just saying, oh, well, he left because David didn't want to expose himself in voice chat, really isn't a fair way to judge the situation. Ignoring that David might have left because he grew a conscience, and just jumping to a conclusion that not only makes him look bad, but can't even be true of the information that is available, is just wrong.
The minor won the call. Because he couldn't do that as he was catfish, he quickly ended their sexting sessions and brought this to the public.
Immediately after, Daft said David ended the sexting sessions and brought the news to the public when Maddie wanted to voice chat. As we all know, this is not how it happened. Maddie complained a month and a half later on her Twitter about David. Syrup asked about it. Maddie said David started being sexual with her when Maddie was most likely the one to initiate things. Syrup said Maddie was groomed, and Maddie tried to cancel David for grooming and then backpedaled when she got backlash. But I want to bring attention to the blatant bullshitting Daft is doing here. For one, David's testimony shows that Maddie was kicked from the Discord server on June 14th, which would have been one of the last times David contacted Maddie for a while. David's I'm sorry post was made in July 27th, a month and a half after David tried to cut ties with Maddie. These dates were available to Daft. So how the hell did he get the impression that David made his apology after he ended things with Maddie, when the apology came out almost 6 weeks after David ended things with Maddie based on the testimony that Daft himself uses? This isn't even the worst part. In David's testimonial, he stated that he was responding to conversations he had with Maddie being posted on Twitter, which Maddie was using to say she was groomed. Now, we were able to find proof of this by looking into the Twitter account that was seen in the screenshots in David's testimony, which is something Daft could have done as well. But even if we give him a pass for this oversight, we actually have proof that Daft knew about these conversations between David and Maddie being posted, as they are shown in Daft's post on David where he shows David's blurred out Facebook page. When we look at the picture on the left, we can see the initial interactions with David and Maddie that happened on Patreon, as well as a retweet underneath showing Discord conversations between David and Maddie. This means Daft had blatant proof of David's I'm sorry post being a response to allegations, like it says, but he chose to completely ignore this. Once again, Daft is trying to make David look worse by leaving out information.
I also got in contact with moderators, both former and current. David would tell him to keep the drama under wraps, forbidding people to talk about the I'm sorry posts within the server.
Here, Daft says David forbid people from talking about the I'm sorry post in his Discord. 1. This message was not made by David. 2. It's not what the message says, since it refers to a post from a year prior, and the I'm sorry post was 2 months prior. This is another lie by Daft. Moving on.
On Twitter, David noted he'd been using his persona since around 2 years ago, so around 2019 when this first came out, though this email says otherwise. Public tweets pointing to from the email led me to talking to someone who was scammed by him around 2018. As it turned out, David e-dated 2 people, or pretending to be a Japanese woman with 2 sisters. The victims gave him money as well as TF2 items, noting that David never spoke directly to them, rather using text. David would again use someone else's photos claiming it was him, and he would still be using the same pom-pom Kimochi account he still uses to this day. So the timeline of him catfishing people, that we can prove, starts way before than what he admitted to. So between 2018 and 2021 is a good 3 years, with only select people coming forward.
Okay, so here Daft says David was being dishonest about when he started being a girl. As in David's second apology post, he stated he's been pretending to be a girl for as long as 2 years, when we have DMs of David saying he was a girl since 3 years prior. Now, the whole sentence reads as follows. I've been with this persona for as long as 2 years, since I started Reddit where I posted my art. Now this actually means David was using his persona since he started posting art on Reddit, which dated back to February of 2018, which would actually fit the time frame of when these DMs were made. While the 2 year and when I started posting on Reddit details conflict with one another, it seems more like David just didn't remember things properly than him being dishonest. But you're welcome to disagree with me on that. But then Daft mentions an email from someone who was catfished by David. I mentioned the issues with this earlier, but I will repeat my issues with this claim. 1. The screenshots used to provide evidence of e-dating don't show any e-dating. Just David saying he's a girl, and not even a Japanese one like Daft says. 2. The screenshot on the right has multiple users in it, as well as a hashtag, which would imply the picture was shown in a chat room, which is an odd place to e-date. 3. Daft says David scammed people out of money and TF2 merch, but can't provide receipts on the statement. This is probably why Daft made the statement of David playing TF2 earlier in the vid, just to make this claim. 4. We aren't even shown the email or any conversations Daft had with this person. I actually joined Daft's Patreon just to ask about this, asking if he could provide the email or any DMs from this anonymous source, and he never got back to me. This honestly makes this whole case about the email received regarding David scamming people fully based off Daft saying, "Trust me, bro." And considering how much information he already has wrong, I'm over here saying,
you don't know what you're talking about, do you?
Moving on.
It's not just an age gap. It's stealing someone's identity when he himself sent pictures, and the fact that he did this to someone who he believed to be and still was in high school. And that's enough for me to be at least concerned about his behavior.
Okay, so most of what Creepy says here is completely fair. David lied about who he was and still chose to continue a relationship with someone he was told was 17. My only gripe is he calls what David did stealing someone's identity, which technically is not true. Based on my research, using someone else's photo could fall under copyright infringement since David does not own the picture. But using someone else's photo as a persona in itself is not illegal. Now, David's interactions with Maddie are illegal and should be acknowledged. I understand that this seems incredibly nitpicky, and it honestly is, but the reason I'm making this distinction is because in the video, Daft states he didn't technically commit a dox by posting David's info, and goes into the technical definitions of what a dox is. This is perfectly fine to do, but if you are going to utilize legal definitions in your own defense, I should be able to expect the same level of research when accusing somebody else of something. Daft and his friends don't seem to do that. Other than this, the rest of the video doesn't have much else that's relevant to the TinaFate case. Daft makes statements regarding his personal drama that is unrelated, his friends have ignorant opinions, and Daft tries to make people feel stupid for not knowing what happened and downplaying David's actions. So, in short, Daft's video on TinaFate is a lot like an old pair of underwear, as it's full of holes that expose the ass behind it. Ironic, since the whole point was to cover his ass.
But like, if anyone just slightly looked into this, they'd be like,
"Fuck, he's lying! Holy shit, how is that so easy? Am I being punked now?"
But why would Daft spend so much time making a video with misinformation? What does he have to gain? You see, one of Daft's strategies in his past videos was to make himself look good by making someone else look bad. The problem is he wouldn't always have something to call somebody out on, having to rely on his viewers' lack of information and stretch the truth as far as he could. So when the subject of David makes Daft look bad because of how Daft handled things, instead of getting the story right, he opted to make David look even worse. That way, Daft seems more justified in his actions. It's why he said David ghosted Maddie over a voice chat, despite there being both clear evidence of that not being the case, and that David himself stated it was because he got uncomfortable with the relationship. It's why he said David forbid people from talking about the I'm sorry post in his Discord when that wasn't even what the message said, and it wasn't even said by David. It's why Daft said David was okay with keeping the relationship secret, which was true, but Daft didn't have proof for it. And it's why Daft keeps comparing David to Lulaboo. Hold up, what do I mean by that? If you remember, Lulaboo scammed people for money and video game merch, manipulated people into relationships while lying about their identity, and pretended to be Japanese. These claims were all confirmed by multiple victims. Daft says David scammed people out of money and video game merch, like Lulaboo, but the difference is, there is no proof provided. Beardus Joe, in Daft's video, stated that David manipulated multiple people into relationships, like Lulaboo, but the difference is, there's no proof provided other than Maddie, and even for her case it's debatable. Daft says David is pretending to be Japanese twice in the video, and once in the description, like Lulaboo. But the difference is, this is a fucking lie. This isn't even when it started. When we look at when this all began, in one of Daft's first tweets on David, he compared David to Lulaboo. In Daft's apology, he says he thought David was like Lulaboo, and in Daft's video on Bendy Fan, he compares David and Lulaboo in the same light as well.
The internet is only as anonymous as you want it to be, with many accounts choosing to be someone else. We have seen the negative side of this, such as Lulaboo and TinaFate 1, both cis dudes pretending to be women online in order to get attention from many a user.
Ever since Daft's reputation took a hit from the TinaFate situation, Daft has been trying to put David in the worst light possible to justify his actions so that people agree with him. Doing honest research and possibly revealing that things were not what Daft had thought would risk the possibility of proving that he massively fucked up. That's why he spun his narrative in such a way that benefited him, because he cares more about his image than the truth. He's actually done this in the past, so if you're curious, I'd recommend checking out Rhythm Rev's video on the subject. But there is actually one more huge problem with this video, which also is not in the video itself, but in the comments section. If you recall, Maddie left a comment on this video, shortly after I brought the video to her attention. There, Maddie stated that David manipulated her, and she was sorry for lying about her age and hoping she can be forgiven. She also completely neglected to state what she actually did, and the people that she hurt when asking for forgiveness. So, when ThatCreepyReading, someone who helped Daft with the TinaFate video, and was involved with the initial drama, saw this comment, how do you think he responded? If you said that Creepy researched Maddie's past with the Twitter post that Daft had shown in his video to make sure he understood the situation, which is one of the main themes in Daft's video, you'd be completely wrong. Instead, he consoled her, telling her that what she did was a harmless fib, and that she was beating herself up over being a stupid kid, and that what she did was entirely forgivable. What makes this whole thing worse is that Maddie says that she nearly got doxxed by Lin V, and that he threatened her with her personal information, which, when we look at what Lin V actually said, is not the case. This is a very serious accusation that Creepy does not even attempt to look into and just takes it at face value. This could potentially make Lin, someone who is a victim of Maddie, look really bad, and Creepy honestly makes this worse by not even checking if it is true. I find this rich, as Creepy has criticized others, such as Just a Robot, for not doing proper research, as we can see here.
They didn't think things through, or, as we've seen in the call, they just missed a bunch of information that wasn't readily available, or that they didn't even know that there was available at all. And from their knowledge, when they made their video, they were speaking from all the information they thought they had.
Right, but when you're an influencer, it's your responsibility to make sure you get that information. And Jar, this entire time, had the ability to get that information and chose not to.
Hey Creepy, what would you say about yourself now that you actually have an idea about what happened?
Sounds like you fucked up your job pretty badly there.
Yeah, that's what I tell you as well. This reply right here is the foundation of everything wrong with Daft's video and internet vigilantism as a whole. Some of you may be saying, but Bandit, why do some of these small details matter? It doesn't change the actions David went forward with. And to that, I'd say this. The whole point of exposing David publicly and Daft making the video was to make sure no more predation would continue to occur. By knowing what happened and how it happened, it can help us see the signs of situations like this moving forward and allow us to stop them before more serious damage can be done. But Daft's actions and his video failed at doing this in literally every way. He filmed the video with so much misinformation that nobody actually knows what transpired and how things reached the conclusion that they did. He made shit up that is easily disproven by the information previously available and the sources that he used. He made claims about David doing heinous things that Daft can't even provide evidence for. If someone was to use Daft's video to get an understanding of how predatory behavior happens on the internet, they would be terribly misguided by his approach and would be looking in all the wrong places for signs of predation occurring. I believe this is why Maddie, the person who actually has an extensive history of predation and manipulation, went completely unnoticed by the public despite there being multiple sources of information regarding her actions, as in the comments of David's I'm sorry post, on Lin V's post, and on Daft's catfish post back in 2021. Yes, you heard me right. Information regarding Maddie's actions was even on Daft's own post, which I found by using the revolutionary method of reading and scrolling down.
Shit, how is that so easy?
It's important to state that the person talking about Maddie here was not in David's defense in any way, and did bring up valid points regarding the issues with David's actions. But the point is, this information was something Daft would have been notified of based on the fact that he was tagged in the response. Even if he was flooded with all kinds of responses, he should have at least been able to read through them and look for information, considering he collected a bunch of other tweets that were made of opinions that supported his arguments. So let me reiterate this. Daft's video not only misinformed everyone who watched it as to what had happened, thus making it more difficult to understand the signs of predation like this occurring, but him and his friends basically downplayed Maddie's actions. The very thing Daft and his friends got so pissed off about when people talk about David. Oh, and the fact that Daft tries to make claims about David he cannot prove basically encourages people to believe in anything they hear without asking for any form of confirmation, because that's exactly what we need more of when it comes to random accusations on the internet. This is something that I find very disturbing, as it shows just how easy it is to not only tell a bunch of bullshit to your audience, but also get other respected content creators who other people will trust to help you do it. Now, some of you may say, hold on, Bandit, Verdus, Creepy, and Sala JJ may not have known this was wrong. Their hearts were in the right place since they thought they were helping. To that I'd say, I have no idea where their hearts are, but I know for sure where their heads are, and it's up their own asses. They should understand the severity of the subject they are talking about, and know that they need to make sure that what they are saying is true. The fact that they chose to, without a moment's hesitation, trust Daft, who has been repeatedly called out for spreading false narratives on other people just to get views or make himself look better, shows that they really weren't all that concerned with checking the information. There's one last thing we need to address, and it's the whole doxing aspect of this. You may think that the subject has been beaten to death, but I promise I have something new to add. As we already know, David's Facebook was leaked by Daft despite the amount of information Daft had blurred out. This allowed people to find out who David's family members were and potentially open them up to being harassed. While it does not seem like this happened, it does not take away the risk that was posed to David's family, who were innocent in this whole situation. One of the excuses Daft and his friends give for this happening is that David's information was very easy to find, so if he wanted to keep this information private, he should not have made it publicly accessible.
As mentioned before, all the info within was already as public as the information could be. It was the nuclear option in making this tweet, but I did try to handle this privately, noting as well the tweet is still up. As per Twitter's Help Center policy, if the reported information was shared somewhere else before it was shared on Twitter, e.g. someone sharing their personal phone number on their own publicly accessible website, we may not treat this information as private, as the owner has made it publicly available. None of the accounts mentioned were private, and David posted all this information publicly before my tweet came out. While I should have blurred my post more, it just isn't a dox.
This also made it so that what Daft did technically wasn't a dox, so it wasn't illegal. Honestly, I initially agreed with this mindset. That was until during my research for this video, something happened that changed my whole perspective. I found Maddie's IRL identity. That's right, I found Maddie's legal name, face, relationships, where she works, where she goes to school, and a few other things. And no, Lynn V and Ivy were not involved in me finding this information in any way, shape, or form. Honestly, they really didn't have to help me since it was actually really easy to find if you knew where to look. I'd say it was easier than finding David's Facebook both before and after Daft got involved. And you know what else? I'm not revealing this to anybody, and I'll explain why. First of all, I am not a judge, lawyer, or law enforcement officer. I'm just a guy on the internet who had a lot of spare time to look into something. While I feel I have a responsibility to inform, I don't have the right to pass judgment regarding what punishments someone should receive. Second, posting their identity could open up Maddie's family to receiving all kinds of harassment from strangers on the internet, which her family, who is likely innocent in all of this, does not deserve to go through. If that ended up happening, it would completely negate the type of justice and fairness we should be aiming for. And lastly, it's to respect Maddie's victims. Now, that in itself might seem odd, but it's an aspect of these kinds of situations that I feel is heavily overlooked. It may surprise you, but victims of abuse and harassment don't always want the people who hurt them to suffer. Many just want them to hold themselves accountable for their actions and hopefully learn. When talking to Lynn and Ivy, both of them made it clear to me that they did not want Maddie to be harassed for her actions in the past, even though Maddie still tries to make Lynn look like some evil bastard. It's also important to state that as far as my research goes, there is no evidence that Maddie attempted to catfish people into sexual relationships since her interactions on Ivy's server. This is not to say that her actions should be ignored, but more that from the looks of things she's no longer engaging in predatory behavior, thus she is not a danger to anyone like she used to be. Kat was bothered by Maddie's actions towards her, but when we were done talking she told me she felt Maddie was just a troubled kid with emotional issues, and she doesn't realize how much harm she has done to people. And when it came to Anon, she had a few things to say as well.
It's like, I feel like people don't realize how easy it is to dox someone on social media. I feel like that people don't realize how easy it is to find someone's personal information, where they live, who they're related to, people that they care about, and go out and hurt them, you know? So, and I didn't want that to be, like, I feel like, you know, if that were to happen to Maddie, if people were to go after her personal information, like, why would that want to make her do better?
Exactly.
You know, traumatic.
There's that. Seeing how Maddie even acts now, I do believe she has a bit of a victim complex. And the thing is, if we just have people going after her, that victim mindset will not change at all. And
as a psychology major, there are a lot of things that Maddie could probably be diagnosed with.
I could not diagnose it, but like I also want to say I'm not a psychology major at all, so I probably shouldn't be saying I think they have a victim mindset, but from
well, I mean, it's not really a diagnosis. She does have a victim mindset. There are definitely things that she could be diagnosed with that have that as a symptom, but I'm you know, I'm not a professional, and you know, as a student who studies psychology, like there are a lot of things that I could say, like, oh, like, you know, this is a symptom of this, but I can't diagnose. You know, that's another thing, is like a lot of people we're kind of trying to diagnose people who cause, you know, controversy on Twitter with different, you know, mental illnesses and stuff like that. And I know for a fact a few that she does have. But I also do think that it's not fair for other people to impose their judgment, because Maddie's had a pretty hard life. And the statistics of people who go through the type of trauma that Maddie's been through is that they tend to repeat a lot of traumas that they've had during their childhood. They tend to repeat the type of behavior that they have received from either parents, loved ones, friends, because it is a vital time for them to be developing their love map. And, you know, if they are surrounded by that toxicity, that's their, you know, interpretation of what love and care should be. So it's my opinion that that's what happened to her based on what I know about her life. And obviously, I don't want to out, her personal life.
This does not mean Maddie should just be forgiven for her actions, as I honestly don't believe she has changed a whole lot, and neither do those who I spoke to. But hate and harassment likely will not solve this issue, and if we've learned anything from Daft's actions, it will only make things worse. The biggest reason we need to consider the potential feelings of those who were hurt is that they are the only ones who can actually inform us about these cases of abuse and predation. If they don't come out with their experiences, we will never be able to understand and prevent things like this from happening. This is very important to keep in mind, as already talking about a toxic relationship or someone just going out of their way to make your life worse is never pleasant because the victim needs to remember a very difficult experience that they went through. If you couple that feeling with the possibility that sharing their story will create an outcome that they wouldn't want, such as someone getting harassed or fearing for the safety of their family, talking about their experiences would be out of the question. This actually almost happened when talking to AnonA, who was rightfully skeptical and a complete stranger asking about their interactions with Maddie out of the blue. This is partially due to her experiences with people she knew getting cancelled, and had to watch people who weren't involved in the controversy get harassed anyways.
Happened to my friend group before, where someone in my friend group was outed as a groomer. It's not fun for either side, and her the groomer's boyfriend, actually, who is a very personal, very close friend of mine, people were starting to attack him too and say, oh, you let this happen, or and he didn't know about it until she was outed, and it was honestly one of the worst days of his life.
Luckily, she was still willing to talk to me, which was incredibly helpful, and I hope she feels I gave her story and feelings the respect they deserve. But this is what gets me so frustrated with Daft and his friends with how they treated the TinaFate situation. They felt confident enough to state that their intervention, as well as their shitty way of handling things, was necessary. Who the hell were they to make such a claim when they didn't even know half the details of what happened and couldn't be bothered to find out? They didn't stop to consider that their method of doing things could make less people willing to speak up, simply because a victim might have a bit of empathy. Honestly, I'd say Lin V's way of handling things is a good example of what should be done. Making a PSA giving the details of their situation, as well as enough information for anyone else to know what to look out for, allows people to both be informed and not put Maddie in any serious danger. So, yeah, good job, Lin. Now, with all this out of the way, I have a few things to say to a couple people. First off, David. While I do feel that people were unfair to you regarding the accusations being thrown at you, lying about your identity and your relationship with Maddie was gross, fucked up, and inexcusable. Even though I personally don't believe you to be a predator or a danger to others, I still don't feel like you properly addressed the situation. Something else to consider is that while using someone else's pictures for a persona is not technically illegal, when people get famous, they tend to acquire stalkers, as you already know. If Maddie or someone like her wanted to find your actual identity and use the photos you used as a reference, you're potentially putting the person in the photos in danger of being stalked, and they wouldn't even know it. This is something ThatCreepyReading mentioned in a conversation we had, and while I disagree with a lot of things he says, this point is deserving of acknowledgement. While you may not want to do so, I think giving some clarification as to what made you enter the relationship or pretend to be a girl in the first place would be good. Considering you don't really post anything other than art, I don't really expect this, nor can I demand it. It's just something I felt should be said.
I'm not, didn't agree to talk to you because, taking the blame off of David or putting it on Maddie, or taking it off of Maddie, putting it on David. I just, I know Maddie.
So, go on.
I just, I know the type of stuff that she would do. So.
Okay, so I do want to say, initially, when I first started doing research for this back in November of 2022, I did think David was innocent. As I did more research, he's not. I want to make that abundantly clear, and
right.
It's while I do think he's not 100% at fault for what happened, looking at some DMs that even other people that I was able to get from someone else who was involved, he was by no means innocent and absolutely fucked up. And I want to be clear, I'm not trying to prove his innocence. What I'm trying to do is basically show that there's more to this than people realized. DaftPina. The outcome that we got is completely unacceptable and inexcusable. Your sheer willingness to lie to your audience to protect your reputation has gone further than I would have ever expected. And yes, I mean lie, because there's no way you didn't realize that a lot of things you were saying either had no proof or were blatantly untrue. You did not accidentally say David was pretending to be Japanese, or bring up baseless accusations of him manipulating other people and scamming them out of money, which makes him look a lot more like Luluboo. You did not accidentally make up false timelines about David leaving his relationship with Maddie and publicly talking about it so he could avoid a voice chat, especially when the information that you were using had clear dates as to when things occurred, and that in your own post on David, you knew someone else had called him out since you have a screenshot of said post. You did not accidentally ignore David stating that he left the relationship because he no longer was comfortable with it, as that was stated in his testimony that you were reading from in your own video. You did not accidentally misread screenshots of DMs regarding David's relationship with Maddie, or that of his Discord server, so that people could believe the narrative you wanted to spin. You did not accidentally focus on tweets of people defending David to make them look stupid, or tweets of people agreeing with your points, when you could have read the tweets on David's I'm sorry post, or your own post that gave more information on the subject. And lastly, you did not accidentally ask your friends, who you knew lacked knowledge of the situation, to state their agreeing opinions for your audience to hear. You had over a year to properly look into this case after you messed it up, and the fact that you chose to neglect honest research and in favor of your public image shows how little you truly care about these cases and the people who are affected by them. And let me make this clear. This is not a board game you are criticizing, or a YouTube video bashing someone for talking about their mental illness, because those, while bad, only affect a small pool of people. This TinaFate video misinforms people about predation as a whole. You are playing with people's understanding of sexual predation, the signs of it, and the forms it can take. Your lack of research encourages people to believe things that have no proof to back them up, which is the last thing we need. And your friends helped with this, seemingly thinking they were making things better. This is easily the worst thing you've ever done, as it makes your Jaden videos, Odd Ones Out videos, and Ellis Mark video look like harmless jokes. You recently stated in your community tab that you deleted your drama videos, which included your video on TinaFate. While I'd say it's good that you're distancing yourself from drama, and that you are not proud of those videos, it has not changed the misinformation you spread about TinaFate. You still have not acknowledged that you blatantly lied about David, or showed that testimony you claim to receive, which, by the way, I'm really starting to doubt that testimony exists, since instead of showing me the testimony, you erased your video instead. It's funny that you say you wish the best for the creators you talked about, when you do nothing to fix the damage that these lies did to David's reputation and to people's understanding of the situation as a whole. These are people's lives and reputations that you are both playing with and neglecting, and if it wasn't for this video, the things you said could still follow them, and nobody would know that they weren't true. It's become clear that you have no intention of actually addressing the people that you hurt, and would rather have your audience just forget what you did. You are an adult in your mid-20s. There are no more excuses for you to make these actions. To end things, I'll leave you with an apology pro tip. You might find it familiar. Try to apologize for everything you did wrong instead of just pretending that everyone is mad at you for just one simple mistake. Correct misinformation you spread, whether purposefully or accidentally.
If you don't think you were 100% wrong, maybe explain specifically what you do and do not apologize for and why you feel that way.
It sparked a shift in my content towards more exposed videos, and so I started to look for opportunities to repeat the success. But this
There is nothing wrong with getting word out about predators and monsters. But if your takeaway is, I wanted to expose more people to repeat the success, then you're not doing it for the right reasons. You're doing it for attention instead of doing it for what's right. That is the crux of the problem when it comes to who Daft decides to cover and why.
Maddie. Before I begin, As I promised you, I will not be revealing your social media accounts, and your identity will also never be made public by me. I contacted you saying that I wanted to make a video regarding TinaFate, and while that was not completely untrue, I was not fully honest with my intentions. Thus, if you hate me for making this video, I will understand. Although in all fairness, you are not fully honest with me either. But what I want you to understand is that this video was not made for the purpose of tormenting you for your past actions. It is to properly inform people of the issue with content creators playing Vigilante without actually knowing what they're doing, and to inform about the different types of predatory behavior that can manifest through the internet so they have a better chance of recognizing it and keeping themselves safe. You may not want to admit it, but you were a predator, and the fact that you were a minor during that time does not change anything about that. It also does not change the lasting damage the people I spoke to still need to deal with to this day. Even now as an adult, you still lie to people regarding what happened for the purpose of garnering sympathy and making yourself look better. If you continue to build relationships by lying about what you did and who you are, those relationships will remain as fake and hollow as your apologies. What I find particularly frustrating is that you want people to forget everything you did in the past and let you move on. Yet you are more than happy to let David continue to be labeled as a predator for a relationship you initiated, and show no sympathy towards how he's treated despite the fact that his actions are nowhere near as bad as yours. So instead of just forgetting all the lives you have damaged because of your actions, you need to accept that you are the one who hurt these people, and accept that continuing to lie will never make anything better. Just as Kat said, if you still need approval of other people to accept that you have changed, then you still need to do more growing. Speaking of Kat, and everyone else from your past I talked to, I want to make something else clear. None of the people who you hurt wish you any ill will. They didn't talk to me for the sake of hurting you, and they made specifically clear that they did not want anything bad to happen to you. Considering what you've done, and how you choose to treat people like Lynn and David, this is something you should be very grateful for. If they were as wrathful as you were, and in some ways still are, your life would have been in shambles a long time ago. The people that you hurt hold a lot more mercy within them than you do. In all honesty, all they really want is for you to learn from your mistakes and become a better person. And while some may be bothered with me saying this, you are still young, and there's still time for you to properly address your demons. But you need to make an honest effort to improve. And to be honest, the internet is not the place for that, since it allows you to lie about who you are, and hide from everything that you've done. I recommend getting off that if you want to change, because an eternity of guilt and self-loathing will never equate to a single second of accountability.
I do think that in some way she might be, she might feel bad about the situation. It's just like, for me, what measures like how sorry someone is what lengths they go to change their behavior, and I just really haven't seen her changing her behavior since, back when she was friends with my group. She did the same stuff as, that she did with David, and the same stuff that apparently she did with a new group after David. So I just really, I can't really believe that she's truly sorry, like with my rational mind, but some part of me wants to believe that she does feel bad for the situation, and that she just really does probably just feel alone.
Well, there you have it. Unless David or someone else comes out of the woodwork, this is as close to understanding the controversy of TinaFate as we are ever going to get. To summarize, Maddie, a minor with a history of trying to manipulate older people into relationships, tried to seek a sexual relationship with David thinking he was a girl. David went along with it initially, even going as far to exchange fake nudes with Maddie. When, according to David, he realized this relationship was very bad, he left without giving much of a reason to Maddie. This made Maddie upset and led to her complaining about TinaFate a month and a half later. This got Syrup's attention, where Maddie told Syrup that David tried to get her into a sexual relationship, which, knowing Maddie's history, is likely a complete lie. Syrup got involved thinking Maddie was groomed, but the campaign against David didn't go well since Maddie really couldn't back up her story and claims with proper evidence. The situation was forgotten until DaftPina revived it, antagonizing David, and completely ignoring anything that concerned Maddie. David retaliated by mocking Daft on Twitter until finally Daft posted David's Facebook information, which unintentionally had enough hints to show people David's actual identity. Daft was called a doxer, and David looked like a victim, causing his catfishing to be overlooked. Although a lot of people ended up calling him a pedophile and groomer instead, which probably is worse to be honest. But another side effect of Daft's intervention is that nobody was made aware of Maddie's actions, which likely made it easier for her to continue her predatory behavior with other people, effectively defeating the whole point of Daft's involvement. When Daft made a video about the controversy over a year later, he got his friends to help him as he told multiple lies and made statements he could not prove. This was seemingly done with the intention to make David look worse, instead of doing legitimate research, which leads us to this video. Honestly, this whole thing is just frustrating. Instead of having people try to understand the issue, we got a bunch of irresponsible people not thinking about the consequences of their actions when they make them. David should have never gotten into the relationship to begin with, considering he wasn't honest about who he was. Maddie should have never lied about her age to constantly get into relationships and then try to ruin people's reputations when she doesn't get her way. And Daft should have focused on understanding the situation, rather than focusing on exposing the popular artist. The problem here is that people generally don't want to understand. They just want to be given someone to hate. If people were more willing to be open-minded and ask questions, perhaps this could have been avoided. And now we reached the end. I've got to be honest, doing the research for this video was thrilling, even exhilarating at some points. I was looking into a situation even big YouTubers thought was over and done with, only to discover crucial bits of information that could change the way everyone looked at this controversy, and potentially affect the lives of those involved. I obtained information nobody else had, allowing me to create a video nobody else could, do something that nobody else could. And therein lies the problem. You see, when you start to realize that you know more, it creates an illusion that you know what is best, and it's a trap many people fall into, especially on the internet. When those people believe they know what is best, they believe they know what is best for others, which seldom is true and results in bigger problems forming. There are multiple times while making this video that I had to remind myself to be careful of what I said, and be mindful of the feelings of those who talk to me. Unfortunately, this likely won't be the last time something like this happens, as that's just the nature of the beast. But looking into all this, there's one realization that I made which I want you to keep in mind. Justice is blind, knowledge is mute, and all judgment that is passed is solely based on what people hear. Thus, it's our responsibility to remember that all that we hear is not all there is to know. And with that, I want to thank those who are willing to give me the information so I could know more about this situation. Lynn V, Ivy, Genevieve, Kat, Syrup, and AnonA. The importance of your contributions cannot be overstated. Your time is valuable, and thank you for sharing it with me. As to my viewers, if you could leave a like, comment, or share this video so people can be aware of things like this, that would be great. I probably won't be making more videos like this in the future, so I can't recommend subscribing as my content will take a shift after this. But anyways, thank you for watching this video.
What is holding someone accountable? This question rings in the back of my mind when it comes to the topic of TinaFate 1.